Welcome to Becoming a Financially Confident Woman, the podcast that helps high-achieving women take control of their money and build wealth with confidence. I'm your host, Dr. April Murdaugh, financial advisor, college professor, and founder of Woman to Woman Financial. I've got women through retirement planning, generational wealth building, and everyday money decisions. Beyond the credentials, I understand the struggles on a personal level. I've experienced widowhood, divorce, homelessness, and the challenges of being a single parent. Those experiences shaped my mission to help women like you gain the clarity, confidence, and strategies you need to take control of your financial future. This podcast is where professional expertise meets real life experience, so you can move forward without fear or overwhelm. Let's dive in. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Becoming a Financially Confident Woman. I'm your host, Dr. April Murdaugh, and I'm excited today to bring you a dear friend as well as really my life coach. I hired her to be my life coach about a year or so ago, probably a little longer. And I remember when I hired her, she said she was in the middle of writing a book. And I was like, okay. She actually sent me the book before it was published. And of course, you guys, I'm such a bad person. I didn't even get a chance to read the book before it was published. I guess it was because I needed to invest in the book. And nevertheless, I did. I purchased this book called Unleash Your Favorite Self. And I'm telling you guys, I just had to have her on here after reading this. I read a chapter every day. And it's so apropos when it comes to money, because when we talk about money here, we want to be our favorite self. We want to respect ourselves and not have shame and guilt and judgment around money and how we handle it. So today, I have Sophia Hyde here with me. She's a master life coach, and we're going to talk about her book today and how it can serve you. And of course, at the end of this, I'm going to make sure that you can get a copy of her book, as well as the journal and the app, and subscribe to her podcast. So, Sophia, welcome to the show, and tell everybody a little bit about you.
Hi, thank you so much for having me on here. So I became a life coach. The truth is, I wanted to be one since 2011. I kind of had that aha moment that it was what I wanted to do with my life, but I felt wholly unworthy because my life was such an absolute hot mess. In retrospect, that's when I should have just signed up for a training, but I was naive at the time and my belief system was that I had to get my whole life together before I could help anybody. And the truth is we're always carrying the mess and the beauty at the same time. It just took me a long time to realize I was worthy enough to help people. And so I spent a decade cleaning up my messes, which at the end of the day, most of my book is sharing what a lot of those bottoms looked like and how I climbed out of them. And in the process, discovered that really the biggest thing that held me back and holds back so many of my clients is the stories in their head of what they're supposed to be doing or what their life should look like. And so for many of us, we spin our wheels trying to be on a path that was never meant for us. And there is so much of me finally figuring out how to live an aligned life for myself came with the freedom of letting go of so many of the expectations and the stories that society, family, religion, friends, all these different influences that we all accumulate over a lifetime, that there was all these different stories of what I was supposed to want or how I was supposed to behave or whatever. And at each time that I could release more and more of those, life got easier. And so I think for many of us, I know this was my experience. I did spend a chunk of years caught up in the hustle culture, right? The work and go and force and white knuckle your way to success. And really what ended up happening was the more I let go, the more I released, the more I relaxed into a life that was aligned for me, the more the money flowed. it was really interesting, and I heard a friend recently use this phrase that she was resting into revenue, and I was like, "Yes,
Love
that is
that.
it. Is that is the best thing I've ever heard, right? Rest into revenue." And yeah, yeah, I know you'd love that.
I'm writing it down.
I know, I know.
I'm
I was
done.
like, "That is so Dr. April. She's gonna love this." Okay.
Oh my
Yes,
God.
rest into revenue. And this doesn't mean that we just like sit on the couch and wait for success to fall in our laps, right? That's not what it is. It's about the fact that it doesn't have to be so hard and such a struggle and such a burden. It's allowed to be easier than we're making it. And so unleash your favorite self, it's about this journey of discovering who you actually are and what you actually desire, and quieting so many of the stories that we've been told and figuring out where they even came from. And maybe there are stories out there. Like, for example, a big story in America is getting married and having a couple kids and driving a minivan, right? Well, I actually love that. Like, that one worked for me. I married a man and I have a boy and I have a girl and I drive a minivan, and I loved my minivan until I moved to rural North Carolina, and now I live on a gravel road and I need a four-wheel drive, and I didn't know I was going to be a truck girl, but we've got to, this is the next, our big financial goal right now is making some vehicle changes. But anyways, I digress. Those are some things that society does shit on you, but I liked them. But then there was hundreds of other messages the society shitted all over me that I had to unlearn, right? And for each of us, that's why I use the phrase favorite self, because the only connotation of the word favorite is that you have to define it. When we
Mhm.
say our best self or our most successful self, there's these little phrases that like, or these images that might pop into our mind, whether we want them to or not, that have to do with like money or materialistic things or whatever. Somehow, like somebody's told us what that word's supposed to look like. But what I love about the word favorite, your favorite life, the mind goes blank. When I look at a Dr. April and I'm like, "Oh yeah, go live your favorite life." I don't even know what that means. I have to ask you. You have to tell me that. And so when I work with my clients, this is why I love this phrase so much, because I operate under this core belief system. Like, probably maybe the number one greatest principle in my approach to coaching is that I believe everything you need is already inside of you. And so the work I do is helping people discover it and find it and remove the layers, right? But if I firmly believe that everything you need is already inside of you, then in order for us to work together, right, I have to figure out what is your favorite self, and and we're going to have to pull it out. And maybe but most of the time when people are coming into coaching, they don't even realize that they don't know. They don't even realize, they'll say a sentence of something that they're going for or a goal they're chasing, and I'll catch, that's my job, is to read between the lines, and I'll catch things where I'm like, is that really what you want? Because what I just heard, there's conflict here, right? And so then we're unmasking a lot of this and getting down to the core of who you really are and what you truly desire, and that answer is different for every person. And so anyways, I don't even know if I think you said, "Tell me about yourself," and I went off on a rabbit
You
trail that took
no,
lots
no,
of
no.
turns. So
You
I
did.
don't even know if I did that, if I introduced myself correctly, but yeah, that's some
No,
of the big
no.
one.
That was perfect. I mean, it was a great introduction to you, the book, your philosophy, and why it's so important. I know you asked me that when you and I started coaching, and it was, what's your favorite self? And I'll be honest, like up in my 50 plus years of living, it was societal. It was okay, I'm the bring home the bacon fried up in the pan kind of woman, right? So I had that mentality. So I was always hustling, I was always grinding. And reading your book really had me dissect different parts of my life, which we did in coaching as well with the wheel. But it had me dissect different parts of my life, rate where I truly wanted to be, not what the shoulds. And I like what you said on page 145. It says, much of our suffering in life comes from the shoulds we have internalized.
Mhm.
We receive messaging and input from so many sources, giving us a perception of how things should look in life. I mean, it's so true. Like, especially when it comes to finances. I meet with a lot of women all the time, and it's like they come in with such shame. They're not where they want to be. They're not where society says they should be. But what is that? Their lives are full. They're doing well. They're able to vacation. So it is just so powerful for me. So tell us about your wheel. Tell the audience about the wheel, which is actually kind of the foundation of the book, and how you make people examine those different areas of their lives to figure out how they can become their favorite self.
Sure. So, the life wheel is not something I invented. It's been around since the 1960s. Really prominent in coaching spaces. And it's this idea that when we're going to evaluate our lives, we have to look at several different areas. Now, if you type life wheel into Google, you will come up with a dozen different variants, right? The coaching system that I was trained in and where my certification comes from, I was actually drawn to it because they teach the wheel philosophy and the wheel in my journey, it took me 10 years to get from wanting to be a life coach and actually having it be my full-time job. That journey was a decade, but halfway through in 2016, I did my first life wheel and it was the game changer. There was the Sophia who was struggling and barely making any progress to it like a bam. It was a fork in the road the first time I did a life wheel assessment because it made me look at several different areas of my life. And a lot of times what happens is the place where we're feeling the symptoms, where we feel stuck or we feel frustrated or we are banging our head up against the wall, almost always, again, it's never say always, but almost always,
Mhm.
the place where we feel the symptoms is not the root cause. And my first time in 2016 doing a life wheel in somebody's workshop opened my eyes to where my root causes were. And for me at that time in 2016, I was feeling like I was super stuck. For 3 years in a row, I set the exact same goals and wasn't making any progress. So I was like, each January I came to this point, I do an annual vision board, and I was doing an annual vision board with like nothing had changed from year to year. I was putting the exact same, I'm like, but it was in my career, in my health, and in my finances. And for 3 years in a row, it was just the same thing. In all fairness, I think that I should give myself a little bit of grace in retrospect because those are also the 3 years when I became a mama and I had an infant and a baby and I was like entering
Mhm.
into motherhood. And if anybody happens to be listening to this and you are in that first year or two of motherhood, I just want to like speak to those people really quick because I wish I would have known back then. If you do a life wheel, like prior to motherhood, you're building this life, everything's fine. What I have learned, motherhood and also divorce does this too, by the way. I now tell people once you go through motherhood or once you go through divorce, and I'm probably sure there's other examples of major life changing events, but when you go through something like that, take the wheel, throw it away. Like tear it up, rip it, ball it up, put it in the trash can. You are starting all over at ground zero and rebuilding a new life.
Mhm.
Nothing about the way you used to move through the world is still gonna work, and I wish I would have known that then, but I didn't, and so things were hard, I was stuck, but point being, I was feeling all this frustration and stuckness in my career, my finances, and my health, which are the 3 most prominent places people are setting goals because society has taught us to measure those things and place value in those areas. Well, when I did this assessment, I realized that my spiritual spoke was at like a 1, and my family spoke was at like a 4 or a 5, and my mind spoke was really low because like my body spoke was lower, but through the workshop I was able to realize the worst part about my body spoke were actually the thoughts I had about my body, not that my body was actually unhealthy or there was anything wrong with it. It was the stories in my head about the judgment I placed on my body. So I realized my mind spoke was messed up. And so what had happened in the 2 years prior to that is I had gone through a faith transition. I had walked away from the religion I was raised inside of, and all I knew was I can't do that anymore. And so I left, which then caused familial issues because if anybody's been raised in a religious home, right, it doesn't bode well when you leave the system you've been taught that you need to stay inside of. And so that caused a bunch of, stuff. But in my head at the time, I had this story of those things, I'm just not going to worry about that stuff. It'll work itself out. Let me just pour all my energy into my career and my health and, achieve these financial goals with my husband. And that stuff can go on the back burner. I'll deal with it later. This is what so many of us do, right? When the world gets quiet, it's 10 o'clock at night, everybody's asleep. That shit that we've put on the back burner, that stuff that is quiet, That's the stuff that billows up, right? It starts in your stomach and it makes its way up, and that's when people go to their vices, whether they're, like, grabbing
Mhm.
ice cream from the fridge, or they're turning to alcohol, or they're binging social media or Netflix, but it's like escapism. That's when we, like, go and reach for the escape, because those things that we don't wanna deal with, they're the actual problems, right? And so the wheel helped me realize that I couldn't keep running from this. I had ran away from something, but I did not decide what I was running towards. And surprisingly enough, when I addressed my spiritual spoke and I addressed my family stuff, which, by the way, is still messy, like, more than a decade later, but it's not perfect, but it's better. But anyways, once I decided to address the spiritual spoke and and the mind spoke and where I was low, within a year, my finances looked different. My career, I was actually in a brand new career, because part of it was I realized I didn't even wanna own the businesses I owned anymore. Like, that was the thing. I was like, "I don't even want these businesses." I was an entrepreneur with 2 businesses and a kid, and I was like, "This isn't even what I don't even wanna be doing this." And so 1 year later, I had closed 2 businesses and had decided to give myself a break, and I went and got a full-time job and I ended up taking 4 years off of entrepreneurship to just regroup. And all of that came from this life wheel. So fast forward 2019, I go through a certification process. I chose the program I did because they focused on the wheel. Then I jump into coaching 2020, 2021, 22. I'm coaching people. And then it was in 22, 3 years into using this wheel, where I kept finding these holes, because there was 7 areas on the one I was trained in. And that's when the favorite life wheel was born, because I realized that I needed my own wheel that was a little different than the ones I had found out in the world. Because one, I had coached somebody who had all of her spokes extremely high, and she still felt an emptiness and it wasn't adding up. So, like, normally the wheel, I can almost always look at somebody's wheel and then describe exactly to them how they're feeling emotionally. Like,
Mm.
I'm right 99% of the time. I can't even remember the last time I was wrong. But this client was one of them. I did the wheel, everything looked so high, and she was like, "But I don't and I asked her, I said, "Well," and I had known this woman like 15 years before, so I had a personal relationship with her. And I said, "What are you doing for other people right now?" Like, she was nearing retirement, career, or she might have actually been retired. That, or getting close. I said, "What are you doing for others?" And she said, "Nothing, but I used to love volunteering. I used to love being involved in my community, but I've been so focused on all these things, I'm actually not giving back right now."
Mm.
And it was this huge light bulb aha, where it was like she had built this beautiful life, finally achieved in her late 60s, had achieved all the things she wanted, and it didn't, why doesn't this feel good? And it's because she wasn't giving back. And that was an aha for me. And that's why I added the contribution spoke. It's because
Mm.
it does matter. As humans, we have this innate need to, like, want to make a difference, to want to leave the world a little bit better than we found it. It's like it's intrinsically inside of all of us. That's why I added that spoke. Also, they didn't have a friendship spoke on the one I was trained with, and we need community. It's not Our friendships matter, and as I shared in the book, there was a Harvard study that went on for many, many decades, where they tracked people from college age into their 90s and measured all sorts of things about their life. And when they looked for, when people get to the end of the life, into their 90s, who's actually, like, healthy and happy and living a high quality of life in their 90s, what do those people have in common? And we would probably think it's like diet or exercise. No, it was relationships. It was the quality of their relationships. When they looked back at those men who were happy in their 90s, and they looked back at, well, what were they doing in their 50s and in their 60s and in their 70s? Like, what did they do to set themselves up for this? The only common denominator that those men had were they were the ones who had quality, and they purposely use the word relationships because it's not always about having a life partner. It's just, it could be your friends, it could be your coworkers, but, like, the people in their lives, they shared life with people. They had community. And so I'm like, you can't have a body spoke and work and so so focused on your physical health and not realize that your friendships are part of your physical health. Like, they matter. And then the last book I added was the blank one. And that's because I also found people's lives are all so different and unique. And going back to your favorite life, I sat here looking at this wheel and I was like, how can I know that these 9 areas are going to apply to everybody when people are so unique and so different? And that's when I created the blank one because I felt like the wheel needed a way to be customized for people. If there was something that I did
Right.
not express there, they needed a place to put it. For me personally, I choose to use that blank area to separate my marriage from my family so that I'm always, when I think of my family, I think of my kids, my parents, my siblings. I've chosen that I cannot be responsible for like 25 relationships because all those people I just listed are married and have children. And I'm like, my in-law, Brandon, the in-laws, that's all you. Like, I'm gonna be nice and I'm gonna be a good person, but like I can't measure my family spoke with 25 relationships. But
Right.
I'll be responsible for like these are the people I'm gonna like take ownership over. But then I keep my marriage separate, and that's how I choose to do mine. But I have clients with all sorts of, and I share about in the book all the different ways you can use that last spoke. It's usually like creative expression and hobbies or organization, decluttering, time management, like just some area of life they want to do better in. That's the wheel, and that's why I love it so much because it allows me to look at somebody's life holistically and figure out where are they, like whatever symptoms are coming to me for. When people come to life coaching, it's usually because they are stuck, frustrated, stressed, overwhelmed. I get a lot of people coming to me and overwhelmed. They're like, I can't do all the things anymore. All the things, it's too much. Help me. Right. So I see people that's the most like overwhelmed, frustration, stuckness. And they're like, just please help me. And the wheel, almost always I can pinpoint exactly what's holding them back. And then we know exactly where to pour all of the energy to help them get, to a higher quality of life they're looking for.
I think what's also so amazing about the wheel, so amazing about the book is that it makes you be intentional.
Mm,
Like it really makes you sit back and look at each aspect of your life, plus ones that you feel are important that you can add to the wheel, and really be honest with yourself to dissect, am I really living, or is this my favorite self in this category, in my money category, in my relationship category, in my spiritual category, which by the way blew me away. The spiritual category blew me away.
that
Love,
chapter.
love, love that chapter. That was awesome. And then I also like you put on page 93, it says, and I do this periodically, and I just loved it. But you said, if I died today, what would I be disappointed it never happened?
That question changed my life in 2011. That when I asked myself that question changed my life.
Yeah, I mean, it did it for me. And so then it sent me to the book, and you mentioned the book in here. Oh gosh, I should have brought it. It's in my bedroom. Big, I can't remember the big energy, big something. Oh, I can't remember the name of it.
Oh,
But
The
it's
Big Leap,
the
that book?
big leap. The
Oh yeah,
yes.
I love that book. I recommend the book all the time.
Yes, so it sent me to the big leap, but it really made me sit back and think about how I want to show up, not in the world, but for me in these spokes. Hey, ladies, I want to take a quick pause to share something exciting with you. If you've been enjoying these conversations and you're ready for a community of like minded women who are growing, thriving, and building wealth together, then you need to join us in the Prosperous Woman Collective on Facebook. It is a safe space where ambitious women connect, share resources, celebrate wins, and encourage each other on the journey to financial confidence and prosperity. You don't have to walk this journey alone. Come be a part of the sisterhood. Just search Prosperous Woman Collective on Facebook and request to join today. I cannot wait to welcome you in. What I loved about it too is you did dive into a budget, and I love the way you handled the financial aspect of things because like I said, most people come to me, and I included, this is, look, I tell people all the time, I am no gem, and I don't have it all together. I wasn't born with a silver spoon. I've lost everything. I made so many financial mistakes, so many. And even I think when I came to you, I had a little bit of shame going on. I was struggling in that area as well. I was addicted to the hustle culture, the fact that I've always got to be working and grinding and making money. And so that was the focus. So talk to us about, and of course, there's so many other great chapters, but I'm going to ask you about the money chapter. So talk, because this is the money show, but talk to us about that and how you came, because there were some things that happened in your life that made you kind of sit back and evaluate this a little bit
Sure,
deeply.
sure. So I'll start just because I know that your listeners, I'm assuming, have not read the book yet. So I want them to know that I shared in that book a story that I carried a lot of shame with. And a lot of people who knew me very well did not know that when my daughter was born, not only had we lost everything, but I was also receiving government support through WIC. And that came as a result of having taken some business risks in 2012, 2013. We were entrepreneurs and we decided to do some pivoting and we took some risk. Here's the reality. Those risks did pay off. You don't go into entrepreneurship if you're not ready to take risks. Because by the way, those risks ended up paying us in very big dividends later. But immediately they cost us a huge chunk of our income. And it just because I know some people are like, what the hell is she talking about? We had built a very successful business in the weddings and photography and videos. But what happens in that industry, and especially Tampa Bay is a huge market for that, where we lived at the time, you have to book a year and a half to 2 years out. And so we knew that Brandon wanted to move towards commercials. He wanted to shoot feature films. He actually got his first feature when our daughter was 6 months old. And eventually he's gone on to shoot like more than 10 now. He has a very successful commercial business. It's where he's made all of his income from for the last many years. But when we made that pivot, we didn't have a financial cushion because we were both in the same business. And in retrospect, we should have done things differently, but we didn't. We took the gamble. We thought the commercial side would take off sooner, but he didn't have the network and the connections to do it fast enough. And so you have to start. He knew if we kept agreeing to these weddings a year and a half, 2 years out, then 2 years from now, we'd still be doing this. So we had to start turning them away in the hopes that he could get more commercial jobs. And I had started this other business in the health and wellness industry that I was hoping would take off. Mine only took off mildly. I think a lot that had to do with having a baby. And his just took time. But in the middle of that, in the middle of the gamble paying off, we lost everything. We had to short sell the condo. We were pregnant. We moved in with my parents, and my daughter's quote unquote nursery was my mother's craft room. And we qualified for government support because the money just wasn't coming in. And it was embarrassing because I had this story in my head because I was that straight A kid who I went to college on a full ride scholarship. I was in the gifted classes, which in retrospect, like I don't even want my kids in them. I know that sounds crazy, but I had this story that like, I don't know, life was always going to be easy, that I was special. And then I've watched other people climb to success and do incredible things at now almost 40 years old. And I'm like, none of y'all folks who are like doing amazing were in those gifted classes with me. So
What happened? Yeah.
what? So apparently we weren't that special. Apparently I am average. I still remember in that season, it was like 2013, I'm pregnant, leaving mom. And I know this is going to sound so embarrassing and somebody out there listening to me is going to be rolling their eyes at me and that's fine. You can. But I remember when I had this epiphany of like, I'm average. I'm just a normal human. I'm actually not
Yeah.
special. And I know that sounds so like silly. But I was like 27 years old, all of a sudden realizing that I didn't know anything else or more about life than anybody else did. And it was like the great equalizer, right? It was very humbling. And anyways, we lost everything and had to rebuild our lives. We were in massive, massive, massive debt that we'd accumulated through business loans and thinking that all sorts of dumb stuff. It's all in the book if you want to read it. So we had all this debt we'd accumulated. But all that to say, by 2019, we had rebuilt, we had a savings account and we were debt free and we owned a home. And so we had hit rock bottom, but we'd also climbed out of it. And now we've since moved to Western North Carolina, our dream like destination. And as far as my approach to money, what I share, and there's a very intentional reason that the money chapter is chapter number 7, but chapter number 6 is the spiritual spoke. And that is not by accident. That was very, very, very intentional because in the spiritual spoke, And for those who are listening, it's irrelevant if you are part of a faith community or not, because if you are, you can bring that to this book. And if you're not, I've coached these same exact principles with atheist clients. It all still applies because at the end of the day, spirituality, in the way that I define it, is you having a clearly defined value system and you knowing what those values are and then living in integrity with them. So if you
Mm-hmm.
are a religious person, then the religion is going to help you determine what those values should be. And if you're not, then you get to decide them for yourself. But either way, do you know what your value system is and are you living in alignment with it? And if you are out of alignment from the things that are actually your core values, then your spiritual spoke will be low because it won't feel good. It won't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to start by knowing, what are my top values in life? How do I want to move through the world? And is the life I'm living in alignment with that? And that's why on the financial spoke, because obviously at the end of the book, you will realize that Sophia loves her some wheels. But I think I like to look at things holistically, right? Because I also made a body wheel. I also made a financial wheel. And the financial wheel has all these components because so often people want to think about their finances as like just the status of their bank account, but it's so much more complex than that, which is why I address things like life insurance and estate planning and and having a budget and all these other pieces. But at the center of the financial wheel in the middle is your values.
That is, yep, you said that. And I love it. It says, when I achieve my financial goals, how will my values shine through?
Mhm.
The old saying, people can have a lot of money, but really their character will show.
Yeah, money
It
reveals your character.
reveals a character.
Yeah.
You're absolutely right. So, and that's what I do with a lot of clients. When I meet with them, it's all about, okay, so what are your values when it comes to money? And just period, not even just money, but what are your values? Because those values drive your behavior. It drives your attitude. It drives how you handle money or not handle money or have shame and fear and regret and all these things when it comes to money. So I think that is so key that you require people to really dig deep and figure out what their values are. And I'll be honest, before I kind of started working with you, I really didn't have a good handle on what my values were. Like identifiable, where I could just list them. I know what I wanted. I know what I wanted my life to look like to some extent. I knew the things I wanted to be doing or should be doing, but really my core values. And so I think, especially when we're dealing with any of the spokes in this book, really identifying, well, what's your value? What's important to you? Not what the world says, not the number you should have in retirement, not the number you should have in savings, but what, because I mean, you can die with nothing, but you have lived a full life. You've traveled, you've seen the world, you were able to spend time with your grandchildren. You didn't have $1 million
I
in the
think
bank.
there's a great book about that, Die with Zero, I think it's called.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think it's so important that you picked out value. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off because I
Yeah.
highlighted so much in your book.
Yeah.
I wrote little notes. So cool. So we talk about values. All right. So tell us about really, how can one, folks get your book? Two, how can someone connect with you to work on this life wheel? Now, I know that you have an app, you have the wheel. So why don't you tell us about that process and then how folks can get a hold of you?
Sure. I'll tell you the absolute easiest way to connect with me. Of course, I have a website, I have all the things, but I think the easiest way to find any link you're looking for when it comes to me is to go to my Instagram profile and click that link in my bio because it has the link tree.
Okay.
And that link tree has all the things. So it'll take you right to the website where you can buy the book. It'll take you right to the link to download the app, but it's different, of course, Google phones versus iPhones. It'll take you right to your app store. And it also will have, if you wanted to set up a consultation for coaching or you wanted to go to my website and you wanted to peruse, I used to blog a lot of that stuff's on there. So I think that the easiest thing is to just click my Instagram bio link and it'll take you right to all of the resources. But yes, I do have all of the things. If you're looking to connect with me, it's really easy.
Yeah, and so especially the wheel, is that something that you do with them
Yeah,
on
they can
one-on-one or
download
they?
that. So, to Inside the app, there's some free resources,
Yes, I
uh,
have.
and you can get the favorite life wheel assessment in there. You can also get it's not in the book, but it's a free resource that I do offer, which is, once you define your favorite life and your priorities and your values and the way you want to move through the world, the next step is actually to align your calendar, because the way you spend your time is a reflection of your priorities. And so the second step to this work is actually to get your calendar under control. And for anybody listening to this who is an entrepreneur, I always I work with almost, I think all my clients are entrepreneurs. Usually I have one or two that aren't, but almost always my clients are, it's all very healthy entrepreneurs. And so people who are attracted to entrepreneurship usually want to own their own business because they don't want to have a boss. But then they don't realize that you actually need to be your own boss. Because if you don't have a boss, that means that you're the boss. And so you have to then boss yourself. And that tends to be the hardest part of entrepreneurship. But the best thing to do is to have your calendar be your boss and to plan it in a way that it's aligned with your goals, with your priorities, with your values. And so I teach a system called Your Favorite Week, and another system called having your weekly me meeting. Those are all free resources that you can get in my app, in the free resources section. All of that is right there.
So now you took us on another path because I remember us doing that. So your favorite week, let's just say, how does that go?
Yeah, honestly, it's the exact same thing as setting a budget. So your listeners are probably quite familiar with the concept of having a budget. You sit down, you plan out how much money you expect to come in, and then you plan out where that is going to go. A budget is not something that you can only look at once a month or once a year because it's changes. A couple weeks ago, I blew a tire I wasn't planning on blowing, right? Like, it's like, okay, well, we're going to have to move this around because there's a $200 bill that wasn't anticipated, right? And so these are all very normal things, right? You set the budget, you know how much money you have, and so where are you going to spend it? And you're spending it. A budget is just spending your money with intention. Okay.
So is the calendar.
Yeah, that's what the favorite week is. You sit down, and the favorite week is the budget. It is saying, there's this many hours in the week. How am I going to spend them? And mapping them out. But then the me meeting is, I call it Jenga. You have to actively play Jenga to figure out week by week how it's going to look different, because you're going to have anomalies, right? I was just telling you right before we hit record on this podcast that I just got back from, I had a 4-day work trip followed by immediately, like I got home at Wednesday at 11 p.m. I walk in the door, and then he leaves at Thursday 9 a.m. Like, and we have two kids, right? So we're just like passing off, and that's a weird week. That's not normal for us. So of course I have my favorite life, my favorite week of how things are supposed to flow, but then life throws you these like weird weeks and you have to accommodate. But it's about accommodating with intention. Right. And so the playing the Jenga is understanding that you are going to move these things around because we have to be flexible. But what are the pieces we can move and what are the non-negotiables? Because there's a few areas of my life that if I pull that block out and I think I can skip it or move it to a different time, the whole tower comes crashing down. And I've got a chaotic week on my hands and a lot more stress. But we understand that we have certain blocks in our week that they're just non-negotiable. They cannot move because they're those like bottom pieces holding up this whole tower. And so anyways, that's why I teach that through this concept. And it really is not any different than managing your money with a budget. The favorite week concept is just managing your time with an intentional calendar.
And your values being the
Yes.
core of that. So, and learning that from you too, I do that now. So I literally look at, not I color code. I think when I met you, I tell you, I color code: green is money making activity, your income producing activity, yellow is general meetings, orange is professional development, and pink is personal time. And so I would go through my calendar and I didn't have very much pink on there. But I would always be complaining, I'm tired, I want a break, and this and that, and realizing that I could put that in my calendar. So literally, I frame my calendar around my personal time now.
Yes.
I mean,
Yes.
I'm blessed to be able to do that
Yes.
now, but you're absolutely right. It is definitely budgeting your time. And in that week, y'all, I have to add this in. I have time where I review my money. I have a day where I sit down and I look at things and I check my budget and I check my bank accounts and whatever bills are due. So it is aligning your calendar really is important. Having that me meeting, those individual conversations, those are absolutely important. And just check-in meetings with yourself. So with that being said, do you have anything else you want to share with the audience? Anything coming up? Any other tips? Just anything you want to share with the audience about you and the wonderful work you do. This book, Sophia, I'm gonna tell you the truth. This book, I'm not gonna lie. I wouldn't say I don't know. I was like, okay, she wrote a book. Okay. I was like really nonchalant about it. And I don't know what made me come across or decide to get it was I listened to a podcast of yours because I follow you. And I listened to your podcast. I think you were interviewing one of your clients on there. And it kind of triggered me. And I said, oh my God, her book. And I went and I got your book. And I'm going to tell you, I read a chapter every night and reread it. And then I journal alongside it. So I took it to my therapist. This is how deep it is. And I'm like, okay, this is where I want to be in pursuing my favorite self in this area, in my spiritual life and in my body and in my finances. It is so freaking good. And so she has the book and she has a journal. Unleash Your Favorite Self journal. And she has an app where you can get those resources. I would tell you guys, just download the life wheel that she's talking about and follow the instructions in there. You will be blown away. And then schedule a call with her. Schedule a call, chat with her, or get the book. I'm telling you, the book is life-changing. And you guys know I am a big reader. And I love books and I read a lot of books. This one right here, this is like top for 2025 for me. So thank you so much. So I talked over you. Go ahead. What do you have to share? Sorry, I just read my
No,
mouth.
I think so. If I were to just like have any sort of like a closing note, if anybody were to take anything away from this, of course, come connect with me. I'm on all the socials. I'm really easy to find, but at the end of the day, I think what it really comes down to is understanding. I think this is where people, when they're trying to decide, what is my favorite self and what do I want? Sometimes we can get caught up in this idea that once we get to this 10 out of 10 life, I need to come back and talk about it really quick, the 10 out of 10s. But anyways, they think that like finally everything will be great. And here's what I want to tell you. Life is always, always, always going to be 50% beautiful and 50% hard. So make sure when you are writing these definitions of what your favorite life looks like, and you're clarifying in each of these areas what your favorite life looks like, that you have room for the permission and the grace and the compassion for yourself, that it is the hard's going to keep coming. And it doesn't matter. So sometimes people think like when I finally have this much money, it's going to be, when I'm finally in this sort of a relationship, it'll be easy. When my job or my business looks like this, and life is going to be easy. And if that's the belief system in your mind as you're writing these definitions, you will be disappointed at the top, because life continues. We're humans, right? We're not robots. And so this is not a Disney movie. We are human beings. And so you want to live your life and set your expectations up in a way that you can meet yourself with that grace and that compassion. And then if you understand life will always be 50% beautiful and 50% hard, then you can write definitions that support that. And so I'll give you an example. I only have a couple of areas of my life where I have achieved the 10. A lot of them I'm still actively growing them, right? But one of those is my marriage, because I came to this conclusion where I was like, I don't know what I'd want to change. Because what would my definition be here? I want a spouse who we unconditionally love each other. We feel we support one another. We move through the world like best friends, and we have fun together and we laugh together. And of course we still have disagreements. Of course we still conflict arises. But what I love about this marriage is we are so good now at moving through the conflict. And so it's not like, oh, my marriage is at a 10 out of 10 because nothing ever goes wrong. It's like, no, no, no. When it goes wrong, we're so good at moving through it. And that's why I can feel good about calling that a 10 because I'm like, if this is the way we move through this relationship, then there's nothing else I'd want to change.
Right.
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 And so that being said, I realized this didn't come up on the call. And this has become like for the last, I don't know, 90 days, this has been my soapbox that I've been on, which is something I call the shrink back. And I came to this realization that so many people, when they sit down and they start working with a wheel, they never even dream all the way to the 10 out of 10.
Mm.
So many people sit down with this wheel and just think, if I could just get to all 8 or 9s, that'd be fine. And that shrink back is what I'm calling it, is we play small. And a lot of times it comes from a place of fear.
Mhm.
And the fears are different for everybody. But there is this underlying fear of either I can't have all 10 out of 10s because those are for different people, not people like me. Or we have a fear of if I actually get there, what will happen?
Mhm.
And the big leap addresses stuff like that, right? Like my fear would have been if I'm actually successful, I'll lose all my friends because of the
Mhm.
childhood experience that I had, right? But we all have these different fears. And this permission that I want to give folks is permission to actually dream and believe that you can get to the 10 out of 10s and permission to achieve your 10 and change your mind.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So sometimes, in the book, I talk a lot about my friend Angelica, who didn't believe she was raised by immigrant parents on a farm picking strawberries. She dropped out of school at 12 years old, and she didn't believe that she could have what most Americans have, right? But each time she blew her mind, like, "Oh, I am a person who can get a GED. Wait, I can go to community college. Wait, I have an A. Wait, I have a college degree. Wait, I can go get a real job." Like she kept blowing her own mind of what she thought was possible for herself. And so for many of us, we already do believe we can do things like graduate high school and go to college. But what are the things that are the maximum that you believe are possible for yourself? And can you give yourself permission to dream to your own maximum? And then give yourself permission to get there and be like, holy crap, I arrived, I did this. And either to be content. So like in my marriage, I'm like, I did this, we built this. I love it. I'm just going to rest in it. I'm going to rest in this 10. And that's like contentment. And that's beautiful. And then there's other times where you can actually get to the 10 and have full permission to say, wow, well, this was as big as I could dream in my career or my money or my whatever. And it only took me 3 years, but like, I'm only 45 or whatever. And what else? What if I can do this? What else can I
What
do?
else
And
is
then you
uh-huh.
permission to write a new definition and keep going. Right? There's other people who will only dream to a 9 because they'll say to me, I need to leave room for growth, or I don't want to pursue perfectionism, right? They'll say like things like that. And I actually think that that's harmful.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at
Yeah.
now, is I'm realizing how many people sell themselves short and don't even believe that they can have a life with all 10s on their wheel.
Well, I mean, it's the mindset. And that's why they come to you. Because you got to do that mindset work. It is so hard though, because when you've been conditioned and you lived a certain way, I lived in survival mode.
Mhm.
I mean, I didn't know abundance. It was, oh my God, I paid the bill late, it got paid. Oh my God. My dream was, hey, I want to pay my bills on time on auto pay. How about that? Like, whoo, it's just, yeah, it's mindset work. And whatever you think you can do it. The problem is just that. I think there is a fear, and I struggle with it sometimes too, still. I mean, I still struggle with it in a lot of areas. And right now, I'm in the middle of writing out my big, hairy, audacious goals. Like, but not goals, just what do I want my life to look like? I do things like, if today was the last day and I close my eyes, what would I have to feel or what would have had to happen for me to say, this was the best damn day of my life. I'm so
Mm.
glad I can leave here now.
Mhm.
So it does stretch you and it is hard work. Telling y'all. So you need a coach. You need somebody to kind of help break through that stuff for you so you can. I mean, there are people who come to me, they're like, oh, I'll never pay off my student loan debt. I'm going to die with student loan debt. Well, wait a minute. Not so much. I mean, we put a plan in place and you got to believe, there are some other factors involved, but we are very limited in our belief system. And I guess that's why coaching is such a big deal now. It's because we have people to help us navigate that. So thank you for the work you do for us. We
Thank you.
appreciate
And
you.
thanks for having me on today.
I appreciate you so much. Thank you for your time. And you guys, listen, I'll make sure her information is in the show notes. Please connect with her. Grab her book. You can get it on Amazon. She has a devotional and the book. They're both on Amazon. And again, thank you so much, Sophia. And we'll talk again soon.
Thanks.
Bye,
Bye.
you guys. Thanks for listening to Becoming a Financially Confident Woman. I know from experience that confidence with money can change everything. Be sure to subscribe, share this podcast with another woman who needs encouragement, and visit Woman to Woman Financial to schedule your confidential financial conversation. Remember, you are becoming a financially confident woman.